Welcome to the Let's Talk Data podcast series presented by SAP, where we explore game-changing technology and strategies with leading experts with the goal of maximizing the value of data across your organization. If you haven't done so already, please follow or subscribe to our podcast on your favorite channel to stay tuned in.
Well, hello and welcome to our SAP Let's Talk Data podcast. It's about establishing a clean core and really, more importantly, about keeping data clean. My name is Corey Birkenes from SAP Product and Solution Marketing, and I'm going to be your host once again for today's podcast. So let me start off by introducing our speakers. Both of them have experience advising customers as to best practices in enterprise data management, data migration, and really it's the outcome, the business transformation. And I love that they kind of complement each other. The coaching and the advising, Sue, and then the practical implementation experience. But there's also coaching there as well, David. And so let me welcome our main speakers. We have Sue Waite, Senior Director for North American Center of Excellence for the Business Technology Platform at SAP. And then we have David Sentance. He's an Associate Partner and the Head of Data and Analytics at Camelot Management Consultants. So with that, and once again, let's just go ahead and get right into the meat of it. So Sue, could you start us off by first explaining what is meant by a clean core? And more importantly, why is that important?
The ever-present question. Well, in SAP vernacular, we think of the clean core as really covering across 5 core dimensions. And when we're talking about clean core, it's in the context of moving from a classic ECC environment, our classic ERP on-premise solution, to an S/4HANA world. And within S/4HANA, that's our go-forward ERP solution, primarily based in the cloud. And that means being in the cloud, we're able to take advantage of different attributes therein by ensuring your core ERP system remains as out of the box as possible, hence, quote, clean core. And that clean core is made up of, first and foremost, we like to think of things being with our data hats on in ensuring that your data is indeed clean. So I'll come back to that in a moment. But other attributes that are very important are thinking about where can we use a composable type of approach, and composable meaning because we can take advantage of microservices in the cloud, bolt-on solutions in the cloud that help extend the core 80% of the out-of-box features with that additional 20% of unique differentiating sets of capabilities that are unique for your company that set you apart from your competition. So that's extending around business processes. That's ensuring that any extensions that are unique for your company are in an API approved way that make it easy to ensure your core S4 system stays clean, yet you can easily extend with addition custom requirements, and ability certainly to integrate with other systems that you may use in a hybrid environment on-prem and in cloud, just ensuring that your overall operations stay clean and efficient. And so on the data front, coming back around and closing that circle, it is so important, especially in these world of generative AI and thinking about using our live system data to ensure the large language models are trained on the most current information and incorporating the most current trends. You absolutely want your data to be clean to ensure those recommendations that come from those large language models within the business process are indeed as accurate and representative of your business as possible.
So all in all, though, we are moving to the cloud, and these are important, right? Even just for like pure upgrades of software. So we're moving to cloud. keeping the data as clean is important. Before we jump in right into the kind of the project and the data requirement specifics, David, what do you see as the first steps from your practical experience in terms of moving to the cloud, keeping the data clean, keeping the core clean? Your comments.
Yeah, so a lot of organizations see the move to S4 to get to the clean core as a major business driver. And that can take a lot of, let's say, precedence within the organization. But there's what I call a lot of foundational work that you should probably be thinking about, especially as it relates to data in advance of that. So I always think of it as, we know operationally we have some data challenges. That's what I would call, let's say, data that is not clean, that I need to potentially look at, figure out why there are problems, and what would I want to do with that. I've been on ECC for many years. There may not have been some functionality at the time, so I deployed some custom solution or did certain things outside of the system that now S4 in the clean core world says this is a standard process. Have I thought about that and what the implications are for what I need to do with data? I've got data for many years. How much do I need to take over? How much of this should I be archiving? And what does that mean from, say, an archiving or retention policy perspective? And so what I think organizations need to be thinking about is, whilst I'm starting to think about clean core, I should also be starting to think about what is going to be my data strategy as it relates to getting to clean data so that my clean core environment can keep it clean operationally. And so I see that thinking about people. Do I need to set up some form of data governance organization? Do I need to set up some processes? Do I need to set up some quality scorecards so we can track that? And when I get into the project side, do I have the right, let's say, data stewards, data owners involved in the project so they are driving the data initiative as we move to clean core, rather than letting the solution drive the processes and the data follows? Because once you get into the program, then time is against you from a data perspective. We all know it takes a lot longer to clean data than it does to create it. So I always think that looking at that strategy and making it about outcomes, so you know what you're trying to achieve, what's the business value that's coming to that, what you can prioritize before, what you can do within the actual implementation project, within migration, and what will you have to keep operationally clean in the ongoing scenario. I think that's a very important starting point as you start out on this clean core journey.
And I love this. So organization process, and you hit on a key point. It's the outcome-driven data strategy. It's the outcomes that comes before any of the project initiatives. And just for the audience, we do have an episode that just would have coming out about outcome-driven data strategy with Maria Villar and Vinny. And so I encourage you to listen to that. But Sue, I'd like your perspective on the importance of starting there with the outcome-driven data strategy.
Oh, I could not agree more. David described so very well how important that is to thinking about the work involved on the data track. Think of it as the data work stream. And on that front, the data work stream is one of the important factors of lining up your business to achieve that outcome. Because if you start peeling back the layers of how do we measure that we've achieved our outcome, or how do we talk about the successes, the wins that we've had as we have moved forward on our journey towards that outcome. From the start, it's important to think about how you will measure and communicate that progress. So not only the outcomes, but then start peeling back the layer, if you will. How will we measure our progress? And by going through that mental process, you start thinking about what data we need to be tracking and monitoring in that journey. And thinking about what data needs to be tracked just comes back hand in glove to the data work stream. Are we collecting that data? Does that information live within our systems today? Or do we need to be thinking about how we will be collecting that as we move forward? having that metrics focus is so important to be able to communicate the value the data work stream is delivering to the overall project and ultimately your business transformation initiatives.
So David, I'm curious. So we're talking about this outcome-driven data strategy. Can you give me like a concrete example of a company that started there with that business objective before their S4 migration?
Yeah, sure. So there was a client who, let's say, is in a regulated industry. They have 2.5 million customers in their portfolio. And obviously, being heavily regulated, they've got years of data that they need to retain to support that. Now, within the solution, that data would not move. And so we had to develop a whole strategy about how we're going to address the data that's going to be left behind, because obviously there's a whole infrastructure of systems supporting that. And so we had to come up with a whole design of how we could move that data, how we would position it so we could get access to it and report on it, and how we could consolidate that with the future business warehouse, business intelligence solutions that would actually be reporting with the current data. And so that was one of those big challenges that was addressed right up front to figure out how do we do that and how does that play into what we're going to put into Clean Core and what would be migrated.
Yeah, so compliance, regulatory requirements are great examples of business outcomes, but I mean, you can think in terms of like increasing customer experience in different areas of your organization. You can also think of just reducing process time. Maybe it's lead to cash. There's a lot of opportunities, but think in terms of your strategy, your business strategy to create that data strategy. So, David, I'm going to come back to you again. So, I now want to talk more about data. So let's talk about data. Starting at the source, can you talk about the importance of source data assessments and then how that leads to data quality improvements, as well as any pitfalls that our audience could potentially avoid?
Yeah, sure. So a data assessment is really looking at the information that you have. And I think let's just focus on the master data, your customer, supplier, material information as a primary source, because ultimately that drives the majority of your processes within your Clean Core solution. What I find a lot of times is that organizations will start to design out the processes. They understand the organization it is today, but what they don't necessarily realize is there is information for many years going back into that system. Whilst we may design as today, I've got data, for example, for plants that maybe are no longer operational, but you've still got data for it. Or I've got configuration values which used to exist as an organization or as a plant or a warehouse or whatever, but now they're no longer there. If I've not done some form of assessment of my data, I'm not aware that that information exists. My design will look exactly as it needs to be from a Clean Core moving forward perspective. But when I get to the later parts of the project and I start to look to migrate my data, I'm going to start to get a lot of issues around this data will not be accepted by SAP because you're providing invalid data. And so doing an assessment of that data up front, profiling it, looking at some of the business rules, understanding those structures, you can start to see if what is being designed has certain gaps in it that you can actually feed into the design, or is it items that you need to either not migrate, start to operationally close down, because we do know organizations may say it's no longer operational, but they haven't necessarily done the flag for deletions, the archiving setups to make that actually operational. And therefore, there are some gaps in that data. So the health assessments is really a critical piece. What it also does, it gives you a starting point for saying, where are my data quality issues? And it gives me a metric that Sue was talking to previously that says, I can start to track that. And if I'm going to start to do some improvements in that quality, I can use that metric, that KPI, to actually start to track that improvement. And if I think about the longer term goal of operationally going live, I can then start to think about what would that mean from a governance standpoint. What I've also come across when we've done these assessments is we start to say, well, who owns this data? Who would know the answer to this? And I've seen organizations primarily focus on the main operational areas of the business. But if you actually do this correctly and you get the right people together, you'll find certain things happen in companies. People recognize there's poor data quality, and they will start to do their own workarounds. They will create their own departments, they'll create their own analytics. And what you will find is that your data that you think is the data you're going to be migrating, it may not be the best clean data that you would want. Someone may have a better source of this. So if you don't do this, you may be lucky and get the right data source, but it could just as well be there is better data out there and it could save you a lot of opportunities from cleansing. One of the aspects about this is also when we start to think about data assessments, we can then start to engage with our internal audit and our compliance office and say, what this data means, where can we move it to? I've seen organizations actually get to a go live and suddenly realize that the data they're migrating is coming from a country where the data cannot leave that country. And they were looking to deploy it into a system in the USA. And they had to cancel the whole implementation in the middle of the weekend because that compliance issue only became known at that time point. So a lot of these is all about doing that upfront assessment, understanding your data, asking these questions before you get into the guts of your program, because they can save you big time in the outcome that you're trying to get to.
I like this. And for those listening, I mean, our SAP partners, they provide a large number of data assessments for you to just get so you understand, I mean, what is the quality of your data? I don't know. Well, understand that before you move forward. And and SAP provides this as well. So Sue, shifting gears a little bit, in addition to getting the data clean through assessment, through then the necessary data quality improvements, what is the importance of keeping it clean? And what are some of the techniques for doing so?
Indeed. It's the other side of the coin, isn't it? So techniques for ensuring that information stays clean. First and foremost, ensuring the information is captured accurately at the source. There's plenty of studies out there that show that, for every $1 you spent keeping it clean, waiting to clean it up later can be $100 spent. And in these days of inflation, probably even more than that. So there's real business value in ensuring that information is clean up front. It prevents shipments to the wrong address. It prevents parts being in the wrong place when field maintenance staff are going out to do repairs. It's all about cash flow. It's all about operating as efficiently as possible. And some solutions that we have to help ensure that information is clean from that first point of contact, from that first point of collection, certainly includes our master data governance solution, which provides the guardrails around real-time data updates or even creation or batch updates or edits, so that there's the check and balance in place to ensure the appropriate changes are reviewed and approved and put into practice. And supporting is above and beyond that is ensuring that information is enriched. For example, we offer a data quality management microservice for injecting the correct and validated address and geographic information, or further enriching that data through endorsed applications that are available on SAP's store, such as CDQ has an endorsed app that's available. There's a master data as a service option that's available for cleaning up asset information and MRO information. So everything from addresses for your customers and vendors to enrichment from Dun & Bradstreet to ensuring consistent taxonomy for your assets and materials. There are options in place to support your staff in ensuring that information is collected accurately from the point of go.
Okay, so all great stuff. And so this SAP Master Data Governance, I might be a little familiar with it. But Sue, I mean, is this a whole nother application? I mean, what should the listeners know about how this fits into the context of S4?
A great question, Corey. SAP's master data governance solution literally lives within the S/4HANA environment. It is a set of features, a set of functions that are coded within S/4HANA, and it is a licensing event to turn it on. It is a separate license to turn on those features within S/4HANA. However, first and foremost, I want to stress that the features for managing master data are not limited to only S/4HANA. Absolutely, we know master data lives and consumed across many different systems, SAP and non-SAP, and there are pre-built APIs, IDOCs, RFCs. The standard web services mechanisms to access information are 100% available. The value of using MDG based on S/4HANA is that MDG inherits and just understands the core data models that are used within S/4HANA. So as you are moving information into S4 into the business partner data model, MDG knows that model from the start. MDG knows the material master data model from the start. It knows your financial data model from the start. It is not something that needs to be separately created and maintained as an external standalone MDG system would be. Additionally, SAP provides some pre-built workflows, some pre-built best practices that are templates to help you get started. And that just understanding of as new updates are made to your S/4HANA system, especially if you're running S/4HANA in Rise or S/4HANA in Grow, those updates are managed for you through that update process that is reviewed and approved by your folks in applying those updates. So there's a tremendous amount of value by leveraging the MDG features that, when turned on within S4, can jumpstart your configuration activities.
Love it. So David, to kind of wrap things up here, I mean, MDG, SAP MDG, Master Data Governance is an important component of keeping the data clean. And you have a lot of experience in this area. What is some of your experience and highlights around master data management?
Yeah, so obviously, I don't want to get into the specifics of master data governance, the application, because of the way I see it is, to a large extent, people have been used to going into the SAP systems today, going into the transaction codes and entering data, and many, many people maintain that data. So people would say, I'm already managing my data. But the reality is, we know from the data quality issues we've talked about, that they may not fully understand all of the rules around the data. And without something like MDG and the framework that it provides, you can't provide that control. So when we get to this clean core scenario and we start to talk about MDG, I see it as a big, what I would say, organizational change project that's going to be taking place in parallel to your implementation. Because what you're going to be doing is saying, you no longer go into the transaction and do whatever it is you are allowed to do. Now you will have a predefined activity within some form of workflow that is going to provide the governance around your data. And so it becomes much more of a, can I change my organization and get them ready for the new world of clean core that comes? If you don't do that, an example I've seen is an organization that deployed MDG. They did some training, they went live, but within the next 2-3 days, as soon as all of the requests came in to either create product, change product, everyone was going, what am I supposed to do? And very, very quickly, they had such a backlog that they almost came to a standstill in terms of what they could do operationally. And so they had to all just basically go to, we approve everything, and we just everything approved just as it was before. And it took them 6 months to then go through that change management program, bearing in mind that it's now impacting that clean core solution, until they could get everybody trained and deployed and using the system correctly. And then they had a lot of remediation work to do. So I see when I get talking about this master data governance area, you've got to realize you're changing the way people view data, the way people manage and maintain that data. And it's now not just what I do at my desk, but I could be impacting many, many people across the organization. So I just see it as, think of it from a change management perspective. What do I need to do from an organizational perspective? And this is where we start to see the concepts of data governance councils, data owners, data stewards coming into play to be able to manage this.
Thank you, Sue and David, for sharing your thoughts and experiences. And, for the listeners, there were so many concepts that were covered during this podcast. If you have comments about something you'd like to hear more of, from Sue or from David or from others, put it in the comments. We'd like to hear from you, because we touched on a lot, a little bit. So I want to thank you for listening to our SAP Let's Talk Data podcast discussing establishing a clear core, keep the data clean. I encourage everyone that's listening, keep an eye out on the SAP S/4HANA public cloud for master data governance. The roadmap is there, but there's so many more capabilities around the on-prem private cloud edition, and of course our cloud edition, which is the SaaS edition, as well as the various data strategy tips we have that our SAP partners have to start off and kick off this migration. And then take a look at, I put some resources in the notes or the comments of what's available for more information. And then again, we love your comments, and please subscribe to the series to stay tuned for new episodes, as well as get caught up on the ones you might have missed. So thanks again, everyone, and be well.
We hope you enjoyed the podcast. Check out the show notes for additional links to information. And please subscribe or follow to join us on the next episode of Let's Talk Data presented by SAP.